I will get to your emails very shortly, but when you think of football, you automatically think of money. The sport is one of the biggest businesses in the world. But where does that money come from? And should it matter? Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich famously took over Chelsea, and his cash injection turned them into one of the world's best teams, although sanctions against the country now mean that he's been driven out. But why take action against just him? Newcastle are now owned by a Saudi-led investment firm. Is that money less stained than Russian cash? Foreign investment has also turned Man City around. 20 years ago, they weren't even in the Premier League. Now they've won it 3 of the last 4 years. But it doesn't always lead to success on the other side of Manchester. United's fans constantly protest, calling for the Glazer family to sell up. But why would they? They've legally taken over one of the world's biggest cash cows to pay off other debts. To talk more about this, I'm delighted to welcome Robert Oulds, director of the Bruges Group and a football journalist, and 2 legends of the game. But let's start with Peter Shilton, if I can. We're hoping to connect with Luther Blissett in just a moment. If I could start with you, Robert, do you think that British football has sold its soul?
Absolutely. The Premier League is one of our greatest exports. Everybody around the world will know about the Premier League. They will support a team even, perhaps. And it's something that we can be very, very proud of. It's great success. British clubs can dominate Europe like we used to in the 80s. But, of course, it's getting tainted with dirty money. There are very little rules on who can be an owner of a club or director of a club. In some cases, we're not actually sure who runs some clubs. They're run by offshore holdings, to name one big London club itself. And there could be, indeed, money laundering activities going on and people who are sports washing. We've had clubs that are owned by Indonesian people who are known as criminals, and people in their own countries who are partaking in criminal activities. And the English Football League and football in the UK generally needs to be cleaned up, because otherwise it reflects on the whole game, and it reflects on us as well, because it is that important internationally.
We know about, supposed dirty money, which is a concern around Chelsea's ownership, which is why there's now an emergency sale. But also this idea of a leveraged buyout, as done by the Glazer family in Manchester United. Can you explain what a leveraged buyout is and why it's so bad for clubs?
This is a common business practice, and what the Glaziers did regarding Manchester United is they borrowed a load of money to buy Manchester.
Almost £500 million.
Exactly. These are massively large, publicly limited companies, and they put the debt on to the company. So they don't ever have any responsibility. If things don't work out financially, it's the football club that is ruined.
Because Manchester United was in the black when it was purchased by the Glazer family. It was in profit, wasn't it? Didn't have a pound of debt.
Exactly. And there's so many clubs now, because there's so much pressure for football clubs to succeed, that they're getting into deep debt. And this is, at some point, these are going to have to be repaid. The whole country is going to have to repay its debts at some point. But the Football League, there's many clubs that are absolutely impoverished, and at some point the bank manager will come knocking and want those debts repaid, and many clubs could indeed go to the wall because there's not proper accountability financially. Football clubs aren't following UEFA's rules on being able to spend more on what they take in, and that means they'll be bust eventually if this carries on. We need reform in football, otherwise it's going to reflect badly on us, and many clubs indeed could go to the wall.
Peter Shilton, football ownership was a very different picture when you were one of the greatest goalkeepers in the world. Do you think football has changed for the better or the worst?
Well, I think certainly as a global game, it's for the better. I mean, football now is shown all over the world. The Premier League, which is our league, and we look on it as our league. The fans in this country support our league, but really it's a global league, and this is why we're getting a lot of foreign owners coming into the league. They see it sometimes as an investment, sometimes it helps their other businesses by the profile of it. So there's many reasons, but generally, all the fans want is success, and they're always looking for success. And some of the big clubs now with foreign money have managed to provide that. And the fans are happy with that. Certainly Chelsea fans would have been happy with Abramovich's reign in terms of winning trophies. But as we know, now with the situation with Russia and his close ties with Putin, there's absolutely no doubt that what the government have done has been totally right.
Yes, I mean, obviously you played for England with such distinction, but you also played in your club career for Leicester City, Stoke, Nottingham Forest, Southampton, Derby County and others. How has the culture of football changed since you played?
Yeah, well, I started out in the 60s as a very young man, I've got to say that. And obviously saw
Still a young man.
four or five decades of football, and it gradually changed. I mean, when I started out, it was a local businessmen would run a club. They would probably lose money, there wasn't the TV sort of games. It was once a week it was shown, and it gradually took off. But it was really when the Premier League started and the money started to come in, and we got players from all over the world joining the league, and it's just gradually escalated. I mean, that people who run football and run the Premier League, they're supposed to be, policing it the right way, looking into people who take over clubs. And of course, there's been an unbelievable amount of money put into the game. It's getting even bigger now. Where's it all going to stop? I don't know. But certainly, there's been some people who have gone in and basically not really invested and used it as an investment. There's other people have taken over clubs and absolutely put unbelievable amount of money out and got trophies, and it is all about money now, which is not a great state for the game.
Well, no, was it better back in the day, Peter, when a local entrepreneur would buy their boyhood club and invest in it in a very organic and sustainable way?
Well, everything's changed, hasn't it, since then? I mean, obviously, the pitches, the kit, we had one set of kit sometimes for a season. I mean, they have a set of kit for each game now, don't they? I mean, there's no comparison to it, really. But, it has, I think in some ways, it has improved. There's an unbelievable audience around the world watches football, but in many other ways, I think players now, they cheat more than they did. They're looking for advantages. It's do or die. Win is everything. And, I think it's, where's it all going to end? That's what I ask myself sometimes. But certainly, without football, I think, the TV would be a lot poorer, as we've seen around the world. It is global, and that's why we're getting owners from all over the world, because in a way it is great for their profile to be associated with a Premier club. And I think there's only 5 clubs that are owned by British or owners really in the Premier League. So that just shows you to the extent that it's been overtaken by foreign buyers.
And the problem there, Peter, is they don't have the national game at heart, and they perhaps don't have the fans at heart either. I mean, do you think all this money has really helped British football fans, Peter?
I don't know, really. I mean, I think, for example, my hometown club, Leicester, has been taken over by a Thai family, and they've done an unbelievable amount of work in the community. Giving money to hospitals, giving the fans a beer and a pie at Christmas, free pie. They appreciate, which is probably what the Thai people are like. And other clubs have improved the facilities. I remember going to Wembley, and everybody used to queue up for the loo at half time, and that included. I remember Jack Charlton was stood in one of the queues once when I joined it. So facilities have improved unbelievably, for the fans. But it's also other things have come into the game. I'm very against how much gambling's taken over football now.
Yeah.
Things like that have crept into the game, which never really existed.
Well, Robert Oulds, the English Premier League is, I believe, the most watched sporting league in the world. It's a multi-billion-pound industry. Would it be that big and that revered if it wasn't for the foreign investment?
Well, the foreign investment would usually be welcome, but sometimes this is sports washing. These are people with unsavoury...
Who cares if you win the league?
Well, the thing is...
Come over to Tottenham and start sport washing Spurs.
Well, the thing is...
Give me some trophies.
The thing is, politics now and sport aren't two separate things. They're indivisible. They are, we have footballers who are now human rights activists telling the government what to do on policies. We cannot have a situation now. It'd be good to go back and have sport completely separate, and it wasn't political at all now, but that's not the world we live in. Now it's deeply ingrained with politics, and we see this has important implications internationally. We gave the Olympics to Beijing in 2008, and China became more oppressive. Given the Winter Olympics, even though they've arguably been committing genocide in Xinjiang province, and of course giving the World Cup to Russia in 2018.
And we're off to Qatar, don't forget.
Well, Qatar's kind of a different point because Qatar actually changed and is actually a model of how things improved. Qatar actually improved their labour laws. It's still got a long way to go, but they're in a sense an antithetical because it's been a force for good. And Nelson Mandela, he actually said that sport has the power to change the world. Indeed, it does, and Qatar's probably the one example where we've given the international community has given a major sporting tournament to a country and there's been some improvement.
But Robert, what about those thousands of construction workers who died building those stadia? What about the fact that gays are imprisoned or even stoned for their lifestyle choices in Qatar? And we're about to go there this summer.
That's really interesting that you say that about Qatar, because a lot of those stories appeared in The Guardian, and we think actually that they were somewhat not true, to put it bluntly. There's other countries that are, such as the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. We're going to be a Grand Prix in Bahrain, and there's not a talk of the human rights abuses there that were committed by Saudi Arabia when they essentially took over the place. There is a very unequal depiction of various countries, and Qatar is actually welcoming gay couples to go there. There will be people can wave the rainbow flag.
And going back to Leicester, of course, Peter's hometown club, that is a very positive story about foreign investment, isn't it, Robert?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, of course, what do they want in return? What's the price? What do we know about these people? How will it reflect on us? Football is, of course, very important, but, of course, at what cost does it have? What cost to the people when people's reputations are being sports washed? When Roman Abramovich has been alleged that he's supplying steel to the Russian army, which is now at work in Ukraine. That's something which is something we should not necessarily be proud about.
Okay.
So there's a cost. We can be proud that our clubs are winning, but they were winning before in Europe. In the 1980s, we dominated Europe, and that was without the big money because English players had passion and English fans were very passionate, and that's in the Premier League and the English First Division then had the most driven football players who just really wanted to succeed, and we could always beat the Continentals because of that drive. So we don't necessarily need the big money to win. And
Robert, briefly, what is the best model for football club ownership in this country?
What we need is to improve the directors and owners test to make sure that people who are suspected of criminal activity in their home country or even in the UK cannot get involved in football. We just can't afford the costs to be associated with it. We need to make sure that clubs are properly audited, they follow good financial management, so they aren't going to be going bust and people's heritage being wiped out. Because some clubs are on the brink of bankruptcy, and we've seen some clubs lower down in the league become no more. And that's a real shame because there's hundreds of years of history, and England has a great tradition, and we can't divorce ethics now from the beautiful game. We can't actually separate the two. It has to be whiter than white and appear to be so as well.
Well, I personally think it's a shame that some of our great clubs like Newcastle, Liverpool and Manchester United and Man City are not in British hands. But Peter, a final thought on the money. What's unfortunate about all of the billions being generated by the Premier League is it doesn't really seem to be going back to grassroots football. It seems to be going into the pockets of footballers, another 100 or 200 grand a week. And I'm not sure what that achieves.
Well, it's all about winning, isn't it? And the game should be regulated, by the right people who look into, the game and people who are getting in the game in terms of club ownership. So, surely what you're saying there is that we should be doing a more stringent tests. But I think from a fan's point of view, they just want to go there. It's very exciting to support a club. It's one of the great. Well, it is the greatest game, and so many people. It's a massive part of their lives, and they just want to go and see their team win. And some fans are realistic, but others they want trophies, and as they don't turn a blind eye to other things. I actually think a lot of the things have improved at clubs, like you say. Not enough money is filtering down to the lower levels, but at the end of the day, it is all about winning, and the clubs are not. All they want is top players and trophies and recognition and profile. And unfortunately, that's. You've got to really look at the game as a whole and the people who run the game as well as some of the things you touched on are obviously political, and Abramovich is political. You can't say his time at Chelsea has been bad. It's just that, the way he got his money due to the circumstances now, that's come back on him. But generally speaking, I thought we're supposed to put people through stringent tests.
But
So
Peter,
it is a bit worrying where it's all going with the amount of money being paid. Talking sometimes £500,000 a week now. You're talking to a footballer. I mean, I remember when Dennis Bergkamp was one of the top footballers to join the Premier League, and he got 20 grand a week, and everybody's going, "You must be joking. That's stupid." But he's going up and up and up. And where's it all going to end?
Peter, can I ask you, is it a personal question? What was the most you were paid for a week of goalkeeping at the top level back in the day?
Certainly, probably as much as some of these earn a week, really. And that was in the 90s, the early 90s, that sort of thing. That would be for a year, So no, the money side of it now, and I'm not, saying good luck to the players if they can earn it. Sometimes, I'd like to see them maybe give a good impression more on the pitch instead of falling over if somebody breathes on them or something like that. But at the end of the day, that's the way the game's gone. And I think it's up to managers to control their own players. I mean, managers I played with would probably, take a player off if you thought he was cheating or falling over for nothing. But now managers, they seem well happy with it if they can get a penalty out of nothing, which to me just shows the pressure they're under. There's a lot of things to be improved.
Peter, final thought on that. It's just a question really about whether English football, British football has lost its soul, because, I mean, if you were playing in the Premier League now, you'd be on £500,000 a week. You'd be the best goalkeeper in the country, which you were at the time. I know that you'd love to have the cash. You're only human. But from a point of view of like the spirit of the game and a football club being like a family and part of the community, would you choose playing now or would you play back in the day in your era? What would your choice be?
For the game itself, and what you could get away with off the pitch sometimes, because obviously now with phones and everything else, we used to join the England club on a Sunday night and go down the local pub to get some team spirit going before we started training on a Monday. You couldn't do that now, and the game in that sense has changed. I think football is very quick and very fast. And I think skill-wise, there's great players out there now. But money-wise, I'd love to play today. But as a game, I prefer for my era, really. Yeah, definitely.
Peter, what an honour and a privilege to have you on the programme. You've got so many fans. The emails are flooding in, and we can only once again salute you for your amazing work playing football, not just in England, in the first division back in the day, but of course for the national side as well. A true hero, and thanks for joining us on GB News. My sincere thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Top man. Thank you, Peter Shilton, and Robert Oulds as well, director of the Bruges Group and a football journalist. Gentlemen, thank you for your time.